Hey guys, JPlays here, and today we're doing a new Devo guide. This time a FreeUp Orbless to X strategy, which is an amazing strategy that is not only extremely AFK friendly, but also extremely flexible and which results in greater coin gains than most conventional strategies. And I prefer the term FreeUp Orbless to X as it better portrays how this strategy opens the door to many other strategies that can be done later in a run. But for simplicity's sake, and since it's a mouthful, let's call it FreeUp Orbless for the rest of the video. And before we get started, as always, this may not be the strategy for you as there are so many variables in the game, and depending on your labs, your cards, your ultimate weapons, your modules and so forth, the exact scenario can look quite different. But I've tried to address a lot of these cases as well as I can. And for the various scenarios that I may not have covered, feel free to ask in the video comments. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about what Devo is, and if you want a deeper introduction to that, check out my previous Orb Devo guide. But I think it's important that we just get some key rough definitions out of the way first, just to ensure that we're all on the same page. Often when we think of this game, there are two key ways to define our approach and stage of the game, via overall builds and via Devo versus Blender. And in terms of builds, let's start with effective health, the EHP or health build, which is a term used by the community that refers to the reliance towards aspects of health, region and your defense, and which overall helps ensure your survivability. And an EHP build would usually be one that relies on health and on thorns and orbs for killing, such as Orb Devo, Turtle, and early stages of Blender. But sometimes the easiest way to define EHP is to define what it isn't, and it is not Glass Cannon. So what is Glass Cannon or damage build? Well, it's a build where your health stops mattering and you could in theory run with one single HP as you're killing all enemies before they ever reach you. It basically refers to late game builds and strategies where your health stops mattering and you're instead solely focused on damage and crowd control, and with extra reliance on energy shields, death defy and other methods to stay alive. And importantly, Glass Cannon could also be in the form of Blender and various Devo strategies. And then lastly, in terms of builds, we got Hybrid, which is a combination of effective health and Glass Cannon, often as a transition from effective health towards Glass Cannon builds. And then secondly, we got the Devo versus Blender. So Devo, shortly put, any Devo strategy means you're devolving certain parts of your tower to carry out specific strategies. This usually means leaving some workshop stats at level 0, and often also includes turning off some ultimate weapons. And the three main broad Devo strategies are Orb Devo, Orbless, and Max Devo. So for Orbless, while there are many variations of Orbless strategies, it essentially refers to juggling enemies with bullets knockback and carefully adjusting damage so that we kill most enemies inside Spotlight. In other words, we are mostly concerned about where we kill. And because damage needs to be adjusted as the enemy's strength increases, it can often be a quite hands-on approach with a lot of micromanagement. It is also usually effective as a transition from health builds to hybrid and Glass Cannon builds. Then we got Orb Devo, which is the most beginner-friendly Devo strategy and which require less micromanagement and which generally is more health-focused. In Orb Devo, you let your enemies hug your wall or tower and then you pull this out into your black hole and kill the enemies with orbs while all your econ ultimate weapons are active. And so the main focus here lies on killing with orbs. And then thirdly, there are also so-called Max Devo strategies. And for simplicity's sake, we're not diving deep into that in today's video, but with Max Devo strategies, you are concerned with killing at specific times with relevant ultimate weapons, such as Max or S-Max, where you would sync your smart missiles to have the same cooldown as your Black Hole and Golden Tower sync, and so on. So those are the Devo strategies. And then in terms of non-Devo strategies, basically the opposite of Devo is Blender, which refers to just simply maxing everything in your workshop and your ultimate weapons, and which is very AFK friendly, where you can just click and forget, but at the cost of less coin gains. And as for whether your Blender build is in health, hybrid or Glass Cannon, that would largely just depend on your tower strength and stage of the game. But while Devo strategies generally greatly outperforms Blender, one of the issues with Devo strategies for many is that they require too much monitoring and micromanagement. Luckily, this is where today's strategy, the FreeUp Orbless, comes in. It combines the best of all worlds. It includes hoarding for a great sync coin multiplier, it's super AFK friendly, it earns great coins, and what's so good about this strategy, beyond the increased coin gain, is that it's so easy to do and doesn't require lengthy damage lab upgrades or lots of stones to pull up. It's an easy transition from almost any mid-game build. And the strategy itself is also extremely flexible, as you'll start out with a very AFK-friendly Orbless phase of the game, and then transition into whatever desired strategy that you may have for the final part of your run, and to whatever extent works best for your tower. That's why I would prefer to think of this strategy as FreeUp Orbless to X instead of just FreeUp Orbless, as I want to emphasize how this strategy can transition to whatever strategy that may make the most sense to you later in the run. But for simplicity's sake, you can think of it as FreeUp Orbless. But okay, so let's first cover the base requirements. First of all, you ideally want your Black Hole, Golden Tower, and ideally Death Wave cooldowns in sync. And we primarily achieve this with the Multiverse Nexus module. Ideally, your Golden Bot is also in sync for extra coin gains, but you could pull off variations of this overall strategy with other core modules than MBN2, but it likely just won't be as optimal. And similarly, this strategy synergizes best with the Black Hole Digester generator module. Basically, as the Black Hole Digester gives you increased coin gains from free upgrades, which this strategy relies on, you'll experience a 30+% coin bonus increase as a result. So, for this strategy to not only be more AFK-friendly than other Devo strategies, but also result in greater coin gains, you want to use Black Hole Digester. You could also pull off variations of this overall strategy with Galaxy Compressor and having permanent Golden Tower and permanent Black Hole, but Black Hole Digester will generally outperform the G-Comp. But this could be different for your tower and situation. And in order for you to pull off this strategy, you need to have your cards maxed and have reached tier 60 and wave 100, because you need card mastery unlocked. And that's because you need free upgrades card mastery with at least one lab level, so we can prevent free upgrades from adding levels to orbs and shockwave size. Because the way the free up mastery works is that it enables you to choose workshop stats that will not receive free upgrades. And you get 1 luck by unlocking the free upgrade mastery initially for 500 stones, and then you get another luck per lab level you increase with for coins. And because shockwave size and orbs negatively impact our Orbless farming, we don't want these. In the future, as you go about optimizing and tweaking your strategy further, you may want more locks, but starting out, 2 locks are more than sufficient. And then the fourth point, you will need to devolve your workshop, which I will cover in detail in a bit when we get to the workshop. And then the fifth base requirement revolves around your lifetime coins. Because as you need to get your free upgrade mastery to level 1, this means you need to be able to spend 1 quadrillion to upgrade it from level 0 to level 1. And since it costs 1 quadrillion, you probably want to have at least 10 quadrillion before pulling this off effectively. There are of course exceptions, and I'm sure you could make it work earlier, such as 5 to 6 quadrillion, but I also don't want to sell you a false dream if your lifetime coins are perhaps not ready for it. That being said, another reason that may help you justify getting the free upgrade mastery sooner though, is that it will also help you lock enemy attack level skips in Legend Tournament, which will help you maximize your enemy health level skips sooner, which can be of great impact due to the importance of killing enemies and bosses before they reach your tower in Legend Tournaments because of the enemy scaling. So those are the key things you need, but let's also cover the things you ideally have to make FreeUp Orbless even better. And first off, you ideally have Spotlight, and you ideally have it with 3 beams and 40+ angle, and 55 with the substat or more. Secondly, ideally you have your Econ Ultimate Weapon Labs maxed or close to max, including Spotlight coin bonus, Black Hole coin bonus, Deathwave coin bonus, Golden Tower duration, and so on. This is just so that we get the most impact out of the sync between all these ultimate weapons. The one exception is Golden Tower bonus lab, which is less impactful and can be done more gradually over time. And thirdly, you ideally have a very low cooldown on Black Hole, Golden Tower and Deathwave. If you don't have a fairly low cooldown, such as having your Golden Tower around 100 seconds, Deathwave around 100 seconds, and Black Hole about 50, then chances are that some other strategies may be more optimal to you. Or simply that this free-up strategy using BHD may be less impactful. So the lower the cooldowns, the better. Personally, I've had 69 seconds sync with MBN until recently, and now I have it at 65 seconds. And my Golden Bot matches this too. And as a result, this means that I could have had permanent Golden Tower and Black Hole if I was using Galaxy Compressor. Which would have enhanced some survivability, but that would have netted me less coins than using Black Hole Digester. And lastly, just some quality of life upgrades that are absolutely not needed, but that can make it easier to manage FreeUp Orbless. First off, card presets, simply so that you could swap strategies in a run for when the Orbless phase stops being effective. And secondly, target priority on Spotlight. Your target priority level 1 is fine, but target priority level 2 gives you more flexibility. Then we're on to Workshop, and in order for this strategy to shine, we need to do some massive overhaul of our Workshop with a lot of Workshop stats set at level 0. And so this will most certainly mean that you would need to respec to pull this off. Starting with the attack upgrades. And simply put, we are making our whole complete attack workshop to level 0. That's right, we are unlocking all of the attack workshop abilities, but having all of them at level 0. We do this because free upgrades are gradually going to be leveling up the workshop for us. In other words, free upgrades are going to be doing the micromanagement of gradually increasing the damage for us. But as you get more familiar with the strategy, you may realize that there are a handful of things that you want to level up a little bit from the beginning. Particularly if you don't have spotlight missiles and smart missiles, you may want some attack speed and multi-shot or rapid fire to juggle from the beginning, but we'll get to that later. And then in the defense tab, the story is a bit more complicated, but basically you can keep most things at whatever level makes sense to you. There are primarily 2 key things to note. First, we need to lock our orbs and shockwave size at level 0, and we lock those with the free upgrade mastery. And as mentioned, whatever else you can keep at decently high levels depending on what works for you, and these will anyways be maxed over time with free upgrades. And then secondly, I would emphasize that you would want your landmine chance and your landmine damage at 0, because this just ensures that landmines will not kill enemies. But this stat will gradually be upgraded in your run with free upgrades, but then the enemies are also a lot stronger, so then it doesn't really matter. So that's why you would rather start them at level 0. Then for utility upgrades, unlike most Devo strategies you've likely come across to date, there will be a big difference in how we're approaching the utility workshop. This is because usually we would have free upgrades at level 0, but with the free up strategy we're maxing all of these. And for enemy level skips, as always, we basically invest into those as much as we can, and a goal can be to get these to about level 380 to 400 or so. After level 400, the cost to increase this increases a lot, but if you have the economy to take them further, then by all means do so. Then let's get on with cards, and the more card slots we have, the easier it is to ensure that we don't need to do any card swapping during a run. You could pull off this strategy quite easily with 14-15 card slots, but having more, such as 17 to 18, would require less tweaks, and 20 card slots should largely be all you'd ever want. However, note that this also depends on the strategy that you go for after the Orbless phase, and it may be less or more depending on that. For example, if you go from Orbless into a glass cannon sort of a build, you could skip all the health related cards. Or if you just want a chill EHP Orb Devo build with shorter Orbless phase, you could skip most of the damage cards and so on. That being said, let's first cover the most important cards for the build. So the coins card and the critical coin card are simply important because they help increase our coin gains. And the cash card simply makes it easier to upgrade things in run. But the free upgrades will handle most of the upgrading. And then we have the enemy balance card, simply to earn more by facing more enemies. And then we have the wave accelerator card and the wave skip cards, just to earn more coins and finish runs quicker. Then we have the attack speed card, which makes it easier for us to juggle enemies. Then we have the recovery package chance card for added survivability and extra shards if you do have the recovery package chance mastery. If you don't have the mastery, this card may matter a lot less to you. Then we have the landmine stun card for additional crowd control and survivability later in your runs. Then there's the plasma cannon card, which just makes it easier to kill bosses. You could also consider using the slow aura card, which can help makes it easier to juggle enemies. And if you have sufficient card slot space for it, the intro sprint card can help give you a faster beginning of your runs. Then, to extend your Orbless phase, you want damage cards, and these can be left on from the beginning if you have enough card slots, because your damage workshop stat is at level 0 in the beginning anyways, so you probably are not going to do too much damage anyways. And so that includes the damage card, the critical chance card, the berserker card, and if you have the spot for it, also the ultimate crit card. Or you could equip this later in a run when you may turn on your additional ultimate weapons. Then, depending on what you may transition to later in the run, after Orbless is no longer efficient, your card choices may differ as a result. And so let me just take a second to explain what this transition means, as it will be relevant for various other aspects in the rest of the video. and this is why I refer to the strategy as FreeUp Orbless to X. Basically, with Orbless your main concern is to juggle enemies and kill these in Spotlight. And with this strategy, you don't want to kill too fast so that you get more kills that are also within your black hole. But more importantly, you don't want to have too little damage so that you reach the maximum enemies on screen cap, which is 120 normal enemies, 20 elites, and 10 bosses for a total of 150. And with the free ups going into our attack workshop, that essentially deals with the gradual damage increase for us. However, at some point, especially once you have maxed your damage workshop 6000 levels, you'll end up at a point where Orbless is no longer efficient as you're not able to kill enemies quickly enough. When this happens will depend on the strength of your tower and the tier you're running on and so forth. However, what this means is that you will then have 3 main transitions to consider. Firstly, you could try to extend your Orbless phase for as long as possible by including additional damage you may have available, such as with the damage ultimate weapons that you have turned off until now. And though it is possible that you may be able to do this until death, the likelihood is that you'll still transition from Orbless at some point, and you'll then transition to one of the following 2. And the second here, you could completely un-Devo and just go Blender for the rest of the run, where you max your workshops and turn on all your ultimate weapons, an easy set and forget approach. Or you could transition to Orb Devo strategies, where you still continue to try to hoard as much as possible, but rely more on Orb kills from here on out. And for the rest of the conversation about cards and perks, what final stage of the run you're doing after your Orbless will dictate what cards and perks that may be of greater relevance to you. And so, going back to cards, if you will transition to an Orb Devo strategy after your FreeUp Orbless, then cards such as Health Card, Extra Defense, Health Regen will generally improve your results by adding survivability, especially if you have Wall or Wormhole Redirector. And you would add the extra orb card to start killing with orbs. Then, if you instead will focus more on a damage glass cannon build for the rest of the run, you want to make sure you have the ultimate crit card and any other damage related card if these are not equipped already. However, you should note that if you are trying to extend your Orbless phase, you may need to gradually equip these if they were not equipped from the beginning, just so you don't do too much damage and kill too much outside of your Spotlight and coin multipliers. And in terms of my personal setup, I have 17 card slots and I do 1 card swap once I transition to Orb Devo later in the run. If I had Intro Sprint Mastery, I would have won another card slot for that. And my Orbless phase is currently not long enough for slow aura card to matter for juggling enemies, in part as I anyways have a pretty strong chronofill speed reduction of 75%. But there may be a point in the future where I want the slow aura card. And at some point I may want a card slot for just having ultimate crit slotted as well from the beginning. But if I decide in the future that I want to do Blender or Glass Cannon after Orbless phase, I could remove the extra defense, health, and health regen cards from my setup, which would quickly enable other crowd control and mastery cards. Then next, let me talk about the overall recommended perks for this strategy. And you basically want all the main economy perks. Perk wave requirement, this should be your first choice. Coin trade-off perk, golden tower bonus perk, black hole perk, coins perk, death wave perk, game speed perk, these are all important for your economy. And unlike other Devo strategies, the free upgrades perk is now a very strong econ perk as it increases the likelihoods of free upgrades, which again increases the likelihood of Black Hole Digester increasing your coin bonus. Though of course, if you do not use Black Hole Digester, then the impact of this will matter much less. And the cash bonus perk becomes a lot more obsolete because we are getting levels with free ups, but this also means that the purple cash trade-off perk is less of an issue as well and don't really need to get banned anymore. And then in terms of bans, you don't really need many perk bans. Level 4 of ban perks lab is probably fine, whereas 6 is great. Anything higher is of course also nice, but that lab takes a long time to complete. So you want to ban the orbs perk simply because you don't want workshop orbs to interfere with your orbless phase. And this becomes disruptive because you want to try to solely kill enemies inside your spotlight. So unless your spotlight basically covers the whole screen, you don't want orbs as they kill indiscriminately. And secondly, the range trade-off perk. We also don't want the perk that increases ranged enemies damage by 3x. With this strategy using Black Hole Digestor, we don't really have 100% uptime on our Black Hole, and as a result, the Black Hole disabled ranged enemies lab will not be able to 100% disable ranged enemies from hurting us. And this is especially relevant if you're transitioning to Orb Devo after the Orbless phase. And then, same as with cards, some perk considerations will differ based on what kind of transition you will make. If you're transitioning to Orb Devo later in the run, then these get more relevant, so health regen perk, the defense percentage perk, and the health perk. And the 50-50 damage trade-off perk is also good because it simply reduces the damage you take and does not reduce your main damage sources, which are thorns and orbs. And you want the knockback trade-off perk at some point because our attack workshop has been maxed by free upgrades, so we want this perk eventually for Orb Devo so that enemies can easier hug our wall and tower again. And the region trade-off perk can be very good if you either have a wall or use the wormhole redirector module. At this stage of the game though, it is assumed that you have wall unlocked. And if you are transitioning to Orb Devo, you generally want to ban these perks. The enemy speed and damage trade-off perk, as this is bad as it simply increases the damage you take, and you want to ban the lifesteal trade-off perk as this will in most cases be negative as you're likely dependent on regen if you're doing an Orb Devo strategy. Whereas if you transition to a more blender or glass cannon build at the end of your run and or are trying to extend the Orbless phase as long as possible, you probably want to do the opposite. You probably want the lifesteal trade-off perk because you want to reduce enemy health so that you can extend your Orbless and damage phase and are less concerned about regen. And you take the enemy speed damage trade-off because your goal is not to take any damage anyway, so you can use this to reduce enemy speed. And similarly, if you're transitioning to a more blender or glass cannon build at the end of a run, you likely also want to ban the 50-50 damage trade-off perk, as you generally don't want to reduce your own damage and you're less concerned about how much damage the enemy does, as they should not be able to hit you until the very end anyways. And you generally want to ban the knockback trade-off perk, because you want to have sufficient knockback to keep enemies away from your tower. And depending on your build, it may make sense to either ban the region trade-off perk or just don't mind it if it doesn't have any impact on your build. For example, if you anyways get so far in your farm runs that enemies one-shot you, then these perks become meaningless, neither good and neither bad. And so overall, unlike other Devo strategies, there's not really that much difference between AFK perk choices versus actively playing perk choices, because the build is so super AFK friendly already. However, of course, if you're still going to be actively monitoring the run, then you can ban more standard perks, simply so that you quicker can get the desired economy perks and just manually avoid the purple trade-off perks that ruin your run. And the reason for this is because these standard perks have 5 picks each, so when you ban them, your overall perk pool gets substantially smaller, which helps you get the perk options you want a lot faster in your runs. And of course, to make this FreeUp Orbless strategy work even better for you in an AFK format, you would want a fair bit of levels in the auto-pick ranking lab. Having around 10 plus levels or so will be a good starting point for some quite good auto-picking. And the more auto-pick rankings you have, the more you can control your transitions. For example, having more auto-pick rankings would help delay the knockback trade-off perk that you may want to take if you plan to transition to Orb Devo, and so on. So overall, if you're AFK farming, you will tend to get the econ perks maybe a little bit later in a run than when being active, but it's a trade-off that I personally am willing to take instead of having to manually pick perks, as I don't have time for that in my life. So FreeUp Orbless can be achieved with all kinds of modules, and what may be the best module for you will likely largely depend on what modules you have available and at what rarity and so on. But let me cover some key info. For generator modules, your Black Hole Digester is the absolute best synergy for this build because of the free upgrades. Even if everything is maxed, you still get the bonus for free upgrades that would have happened. And with the cumulative free upgrade chance of easily over 300%, you will easily have 30% plus coin bonus. You could also go with Galaxy Compressor, of course, since that will give you a lot more survivability if it lets you have permanent black hole, but at the cost of a substantial coin bonus. This may sound counterintuitive at first because you would think that having permanent golden tower and black hole should net you more coins, but with low econ ultimate weapon cooldowns, Black Hole Digester will tend to outperform Galaxy Compressor and Perma strategies. Because of the aforementioned free up coin bonus, but also because you will anyways not kill many enemies during your short downtime of your Econ ultimate weapons. Singularity Harness could also be an option as it gives a nice golden bot range bonus, but again, Black Hole Digester is by far the most ideal generator to use for this strategy. And as for the sub-module effects for your Black Hole Digester, ideally you have both enemy level skip substats or only enemy health level skips if enemy attack level skips is irrelevant for your build. And you have the coins per kill bonus. And then you have a combination of free utility upgrades, free attack upgrades, or free defense upgrades. Personally, since I transitioned to Orb Devo after the Orbless phase, I so far only have enemy attack level skip substats and not the enemy health level skips. But in the near future, once I have saved up more reroll shards, I may try to change this, as getting more enemy health level skips will help extend the Orbless phase. Or I may wait until I reach level 161 in my modules in the near future so I can roll it for my 6th substat. Then for core modules, the best option is to use Multiverse Nexus because you want to decrease your sync time and have this time synced with your golden bot. However, this is not an absolute must, but you'll typically experience best result by using Multiverse Nexus. And if you don't use it, you really ideally should have natural sync for your Econ ultimate weapons. And depending on your golden bot cooldown and overall Econ ultimate weapon stats, your sub-module effects that are particularly helpful include Spotlight Angle, which helps extend the range where your spotlight is effective during the Orbless phase. The Golden Tower cooldown and Death Wave cooldown to help reduce your overall cooldowns for more frequent syncs and less downtime. Golden Tower bonus just to give a decent bonus to your Golden Tower. Death Wave quantity just again for a decent bonus to coin but also to sell income. And then others that you can consider are Spotlight bonus that can help you ensure more kills are occurring in Spotlight. Potentially Chronofill duration or cooldown if getting it permanent could vastly enhance your ability to juggle enemies. Or the Chronofill speed reduction if it substantially helps you slow down enemies, and especially if this ability is already maxed with stones. Or whatever else that may help you with your final stage strategy after the Orbless phase. And then for canon modules, you can largely go with anything except Death Penalty, as this reduces your coin income. Generally speaking, you may simply use whatever canon module has the highest module rarity and ancestral star rating so that your overall damage output will scale to a higher extent. And the same rationale can be made in terms of increasing your damage output of your canon module by substats, where you may want critical factor, critical chance, supercritical multiplier, supercritical chance, and attack speed can help you juggle enemies more effectively, plus some increased damage. And then for armor modules, this will depend a bit in terms of what strategy you're doing at the final part of your run, and whatever works best for you. Though you could essentially make this work with any armor module. The Anti-Cube Portal may favor a damage-focused build, whereas Negative Mass Projector or Space Displacer could more greatly benefit hybrid or health builds, because the Negative Mass Projector can reduce raid damage and so forth, and Space Displacer can offer some crowd control. In terms of substats, if you will use Orb Devo at the end of your run, you may want a bit more EHP focus on your module substats, such as wall health, health regen, thorns, defense, and so on. Whereas if you will transition to Glass Cannon or Blender, you could opt for more damage focus, such as Orbs, Shockwave Frequency, Orb Speed, Knockback Chance, Death Defy, and so forth. Overall, this is just an area where you gotta take into consideration what works best for you and your current build and your current armor modules. Personally, I currently use a Wormhole Redirector, simply as it is my currently strongest EHP armor module. However, I plan to roll the Negative Mass Projector substats in the future to hopefully soon make that my new armor module for farming. And so, assuming you've incorporated the suggestions and requirements mentioned up until now, let's get into the actual strategy of doing FreeUp Orbless to X in a run. Starting off, you want to ensure that all your damage ultimate weapons are turned off. The only exception could be Spotlight missiles. If you only have Spotlight and not yet unlocked Smart Missiles, your Spotlight missiles will do very little damage, and so it doesn't really matter anyways. But later, once you have unlocked Smart Missiles and labbed the Missile Amplifier lab, having Spotlight missiles is a nice and AFK-friendly start to the farming. This is among others because Spotlight missiles only shoot inside your Spotlight, regardless of what your targeting priority is, and so this ensures efficient early run farming. Because even if you're setting your own target priority to spotlight, your bullet abilities of rapid fire, bounce shot, multi-shot, they do not respect your target priority. And so basically we don't really need to do anything at all for the start of the run. But of course it would be optimized if you spend some time to upgrade your enemy level skips manually with cash, when possible at the start of the run. And if you're transitioning to Orb Devil later in the run, you would focus on your enemy attack level skips first, and if you're doing a blender or glass cannon later in the run, you'll focus on your enemy health level skips first. Both, however, will be maxed quite early because of your free upgrades. And as you do this strategy the first few times, you will want to look and see if your gradual workshop free ups increase sufficiently to avoid maximum enemies to screen for prolonged durations. And this will depend greatly on your tier and tower strength and so on. For some, having the attack workshop 100% at level 0 may be the best, whereas for some, they may want to start at level 500 or 1000 for the damage workshop. This you will just have to test for yourself. Or in the case before having a strong spotlight missiles, you may want to have your attack speed maxed from the beginning to just help with the juggling. So these are just some of the things that you will need to test for yourself. However, as mentioned, if you do have spotlight missiles, you'd want to upgrade your missile amplifier so that your spotlight missiles can do the heavy lifting at the beginning of a run. Then, at some point in your run, your default FreeUp Orbless will become less efficient as you'll struggle to kill enemies effectively and will reach max enemies on screen with maxed workshop. As discussed earlier, you then have various options. One, you could extend your Orbless. You could gradually try to introduce ultimate weapon damage to extending the Orbless phase and various other strategies towards the end of the run as relevant for your tower. Here you may need to tweak and learn to see what works best for you. For example, when you turn on Chain Lightning and you see that it does too much damage, then you could try to take off your damage cards and then gradually reintroduce those and so on. And secondly, you could transition to a full blender by just maxing everything, including workshop orbs and shockwave size, and sending it for the rest of the run. Just set and forget. And then thirdly, you could transition to Orb Devo by equipping your extra orb card and taking the knockback trade-off perk. And you may experiment with whether it makes sense to keep your range at 30 meters or to increase this to 69.5 or 75 meter with a range level level 4. And if you have Chronofield, you could experiment with taking this off or unequipping your attack speed card and so on, simply to make it so that your enemies start hugging the wall. And again, the fact that you can choose however you want to transition is one of the many reasons that this strategy is so powerful. It's not only AFK friendly, but also gives you a lot of options on how to go about optimizing your tower, build, and strategy. Personally, as I lack damage, among others by not having smart missiles or poison swamp unlocked, not having any damage masteries, and having my damage and crit factor lab levels at around level 50, I prefer transitioning to Orb Devo at the moment. And I auto-pick the knockback trade-off perk at some point, which means that enemies will start to hug the tower and wall gradually. And I can equip the orb card whenever I feel like it, which is the only real interception or manual thing that I technically would do at all over the whole run. I don't need to change any other cards, I don't toggle any ultimate weapons or anything else. Though, if I wanted to transition to Orb Devo sooner, for example, if I'm checking in on the run earlier but can't check on it later again, I could turn off my Chronofield and attack speed and put on the extra orb card just to have the enemies hug the wall earlier and kill them with orbs. And what I also find exciting is that my overall build will fit well with future strategies that I want to implement for my tower. But more about these forms of optimizations and other strategies in the future once I'm able to better show you how it works. And of course, it is important to acknowledge the impact of other potential card masteries. For example, if you have the recovery package chance card mastery, you likely want package chance substat on your Black Hole Digester. The wave accelerator card mastery synergizes well with this build as you quicker get to the more relevant parts of your run for better coin gains. And the same can be said for the intro sprint card mastery. And the damage card mastery and the demon card mastery will help extend the Orbless phase for longer due to the increased damage. And the super tower mastery could also potentially be impactful. However, it does require to be maxed to be consistent, which makes it a lot harder to use effectively until then, because you want consistency of damage so that you have more control of the gradual damage increase. However, Super Tower Mastery also buffs the Spotlight bonus, which can be great to boost the effectiveness and duration of the Orbless phase. And finally, obviously getting the masteries that increase coin income would also be beneficial for this strategy, whether that is the coins card, or the wave skip card, or the critical coin mastery. And particularly if doing Orb Devo strategy later in the run, the extra Orb mastery would give you extra coins from Orb kills. And beyond the aforementioned card masteries that can help you improve your build, here are some other key things to continue to improve the strategy overall. Getting Spotlight missiles with Missiles Amp Lab, just to optimize the Spotlight missiles for the early phase of farming and better handle protectors. Although it's usually not a lot of coins earned early in a farm run anyways. But the second point is to try to find the sweet spot of whether you should start with everything in Attack Workshop at level 0, or if there are certain things you want to level up a bit to help the damage reach relevant levels at the relevant time in the run. And or starting with things such as attack speed maxed. And since this strategy essentially means that you will have to respec for tournaments, which may anyways have been beneficial for you, you would benefit from getting the workshop respec discount upgrade in the vault. And similarly, eventually getting the damage cap slider in the vault will make your damage scaling even more consistent and fine-tuned than the gradual free ups. And Black Hole Digester will still remain strong, and this can help ensure that you may not have a need to respec for tournaments, as you can keep your attack workshop levels a lot higher instead of at level 0. And then you want to work towards lower cooldowns while keeping Black Hole and Golden Tower and Deathwave in sync. And basically, though it will likely take a long time to get your Deathwave cooldowns maxed, you can virtually achieve permanent Black Hole and Golden Tower uptime even when using the Black Hole Digester module. This, of course, is quite a late game strategy, but it's a goal nonetheless. And you want to work on improving your substats on your Black Hole Digester and getting more substat slots, which will be of great impact. And you want to keep improving your free up, enemy level skips, and coin enhancements, which will see your coin income increase further. And you want to improve your damage to extend the Orbless phase. Though, you want to be careful of overdoing certain things, such as chain lightning damage, as making this too strong can make it very difficult to manage for any effective farming strategy later on. And then you may want to be leveling up your free upgrade mastery so that you can also lock other stats as desired, such as landmine chance, bounce shot range, and so on for potentially more optimized builds. And you may eventually work on getting your chrono field maxed, including 60-second duration and cooldown, and with chronofill speed reduction maxed or close to max, as this will make the juggling of enemies a lot easier and for longer duration in a run. And importantly, if you have Golden Tower Plus, you want to make sure that your duration is offset by at least 1 second of the sync time. And this is because Golden Tower Plus gives you a multiplier based on the enemies that spawn during your Golden Tower duration. So if your Golden Tower duration is less than or equal to your sync, that would mean that once your ultimate weapons activate and you start to kill the stacked horde, your Golden Tower Plus would only be gaining a multiplier on the enemy spawning and not the stack that you already have accumulated. So basically, as the stack is already spawned and Golden Tower activates after the stack is accumulated in Black Hole, they do not get affected by Golden Tower Plus. And then PS, other things to note and disclaimers. So key thing, this strategy is substantially less appealing if you're not respecing for tournaments, because you would not want your attack workshop upgrades to be at level 0 when, for example, you're starting a champion or legend tournament run. As for respecking though, you can consider the relevance of either a soft respec or a hard respec. By soft respec, I mean that you simply would upgrade your workshop with coins you have on hand to prepare for the tournament, and then spend 150 gems to revert after the tournament. By hard respec, I mean that you respec before tournament and shift all your build to be focused on tournament performance, including removing all invested coins that you have in Coins Plus and Cells Plus enhancements and put these into damage and reduce your overall health related enhancements and so forth. And then after tournament, you would respec again to get back to your original build. And this would then cost you a total of 300 gems per tournament. And a key consideration you have to make here is if it's worth it for you to spend gems on respecing. If your modules are not sufficiently developed and you need more ancestral modules and so on, it may be better to hold off on a strategy like this until you have managed to acquire those. And as mentioned earlier in regards to way to improve this strategy, you can mitigate the issue of respecs by getting the workshop respec discount upgrade in the vault, which can make respecking free. And you can remove the need to start at low attack workshop levels by acquiring the damage cap slider in the vault. However, both of these require substantial amount of keys to unlock. And also, just a reminder that as you try new strategies in the game, you should measure your overall coin gains per hour and per day. Don't get too caught up with vanity metrics like coins per minute, though they can be an indicator of how your run is performing. But what you are concerned with is how much you're able to make in an average hour and in a day. So use a tool like what tier should I farm and measure. And also keep in mind that when trying a new strategy, your build will generally not be optimized for the first time you try it. Say, in my case of transitioning from Orb Devo with Singularity Harness to Black Hole Digester, it at first resulted in a drop of about 20% or so in terms of coin income. But after getting my substats and other enhancements and other things in order, it now does about 40% better and will continue to improve as I enhance the build further. And last disclaimer of sorts, while I've talked a lot about various forms of optimizations to make increased coin gains with this build and so on, you could opt for this strategy a lot sooner in various ways if your only alternative gameplay is Blender because of life schedule and availability and so forth. You could, for example, simply start out with Black Hole Digester minimum range Blender first, and then work on your Black Hole Digester substats and transition fully once you can afford the FreeUp mastery. And so yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. And lastly, just a shout out to Garkin who guided me a fair bit as I've been testing and doing this strategy. And you'll also find a shorter written guide on FreeUp Orbless on the Tower Knowledge Hub. But okay, that covers a fair bit about FreeUp Orbless to X. If you're able to incorporate this strategy effectively, you will be monitoring your game a lot less while also seeing increased coin gains. And it opens up the door to many exciting other strategies, many of which I'm excited to share with you in the future. However, again, as everyone's tower is different, do take all the advice given here today with a grain of salt. Try tweaks that may benefit you and your tower. There are so many variables that there never is an absolute truth to anything, but hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has been helpful, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you feel like there's anything I've missed, let me know in the comments. See you in the next.